How's it going, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And man, I have a full house of some of my favorite creators here. To my right is Peter J. Tomasi. Driving around is Francis Manapul. And all the way across the pond is Peter Snejberg. Hope I got that right. How is everybody doing? Gentlemen, how are you all?
Wonderful.
Good.
Very well.
Great to hear that. I do have to say one thing before we get started. I've already stated that I'm a huge fan of all three of you and your work in comics for many years. One person in particular told me they don't do live interviews, and he told me I had to go to conventions to go get any interviews.
Who was that?
That was you.
Yeah. Names.
He was like, dude, Omar, I am too important to be doing Zoom interviews. I don't have any time. And he gave me a whole speech, and I was like, okay. And then like 5 years later, I interviewed him at another show. Man, but I'm just glad I have you here. All kidding aside. Thank you.
No,
Thank you.
It's good. It's good to be here. I'm a big fan of the show. I don't ever chime in because I like to let people jabber away. But I love listening to your shows and you checking out the omnibuses and the collective editions. Very informative, and I'm a fan.
Well, thank you, sir. I'm a huge fan of your work as well, and it's really cool to see, your name on so many omnis.
It is. It's nice. Just got the Green Lantern Corps Volume 2 Omni today, and it looks really great. It brings our whole Green Lantern Corps thing to an end, and it's nice to have it all there now in 2 big volumes. So really proud of it. DC did a great job. And shout out to Alex Gaylor and Steve Cook and Curtis King for great design work and eyes on the ball and got us in the details kind of stuff. Those books are, those massive tomes are hard to put together, as I'm sure everybody knows. So really a good shout out to those guys. Thank you so much.
Man, it's somebody that has been wanting those books since I started talking to you, like in our first interview 8 years ago or 7 years ago. That is wonderful to have on the bookcase. And Francis, you also have a omnibus. You have the Batman, or not Batman, the Flash.
Yeah.
That was one of the first ones that came out with Flash.
I think so. Yeah. It's a good monitor riser.
Monitor riser. Okay.
It's perfect. I actually did use it for that. Look. To be fair, they give us a few copies. Sorry, by the way, disclaimer, I am not driving, in case anybody's wondering.
Kids, don't try this at home.
Yeah, I'm safely parked in a IKEA parking lot. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're playing it safe. And do I just call you Snejberg or Peter? What do I call you, sir?
Say Peter S.
Call me, Peter S is probably,
S.
We have the same problem internally.
I was gonna say it's like being in class and somebody new comes in with your name, and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh man, am I gonna be Omar 1 or Omar 2?" I've been here longer.
In all my classes, there were always at least 3 guys named Peter when I was growing up.
So they called you by your last name?
I think they were called by the initial Peter S, Peter M, Peter whatever.
Now, I remember the first time I saw your work, sir, was in the pages of one of my all-time favorite comics, and that is James Robinson's Starman. And you came on board to finish out the series and drew some of the most amazing scenes.
Thank you.
In that series that are embedded forever in my brain, like scenes that bring me to tears and just beautiful. I love it. So thank you. So yeah, you guys have been in the industry for a long time. I mean, we got a lot of years of experience just between the 3 of you.
Probably close to almost 100 years, I would think.
I did not want to age anybody.
Yeah, let's slow down there.
Add it all up, it's going to be close. Me and Peter alone, we've got at least 30. So
that's right. The Peters make up the bulk of that. So.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Francis, how did you get started? I remember finding your work in the pages of Witchblade. That was the first time I saw your artwork. How did you come about getting into comics?
Well, I mean, there's As a fan or as a professional?
Both.
Both. Okay. Well, I mean, as a fan, really, my dad bought me comic books when I was younger. A lot of it was so that I could, improve on my English and my reading abilities.
Yeah.
And then I kind of just dropped out for a while until my mom was actually at a bookstore. She was picking up some, like, I think interior design books. And I saw some X-Men comics on a spinner rack. And I'm like, oh, let me take a look at one of these things. And it had Jim Lee art in it. And then from there on, it was like literally like, holy crap. I did not know comics could be this cool. And at that point in time, everything X-Men. And then from once they all left, it was everything Image. If it had an Image eye on it, I bought it, So that literally became kind of, I was also really into basketball at the time, and I still am. Mm-hmm. And I remember watching this documentary called Hoop Dreams. And, I'm kind of like, oh, man, so even as a kid, you have the ability to rise up, right? So I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to be playing basketball professionally anytime soon, but I think I can kind of draw. So when I was about like 13, 14, I started working on my portfolio. So around the time I was about 15, 16, I started hitting conventions, showing editors my work. And then 3-4 years later is when I ended up at Top Cow. So, yeah.
So you ended up at Top Cow. Was it a talent search, or were you just showing your portfolios around?
No, I was just showing my portfolio around. Like one of my best friends in the industry, Frank Mastromaro over at Aspen Comics. He was at marketing at the time at Top Cow, and my work just ended up on his desk. I had met Matt Hawkins a few times before, and we stayed in contact. But really, the main factor was copies of my work ending up on Frank's desk. And he saw that I was drawing robots and stuff, and they were doing some tie-in books, that it was like kind of books that they never had to show publicly, So they're like, okay, we can take a chance on this kid. And so I did these short stories, and then they were awful. But the main thing was establishing that connection and that friendship. And then I just kept showing them my work, right? And also, the thing is, at the time, I had this warped perception in my brain that just like basketball, if you don't break in by the time you're 18, it's too late, right? So I was really, really driven when I was like 16 years old to really go to all these conventions. So I was that kid, if you were at conventions in the early 2000s, that was probably me bugging you with my portfolio.
Oh, that was you.
That was me, Peter. Yeah.
And Peter, you saw a lot of these portfolios, right? Because you were an editor at DC Comics for a while.
Yeah, for 15 years. It was a long time at DC. It's been a lot of years, it was all great years. So it was before it got a little too, let's just say, corporate. It was a really good time to be an editor. It was a good time to be talent. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a great time. And yeah, it was, I never went, like I've told people, and I've never got up every morning like, oh man, I got to go to work today. No matter what, being at DC those years were really a lot of fun. And it was, editors back in the day too. We had our own little fiefdoms, and we were really in control of our own destinies and our own books, so to speak. It was a different time, and I was very happy to be a part of it when it was like that.
And Peter S., how about you? How did you first break into the industry? And were you a fan of
I guess I was kind of a late bloomer. I've always been drawing comics. It's always been a huge interest of mine, but I never, growing up in Denmark, it was never like, I never saw it as a career option or anything like that. It was never, but no, I guess I kind of failed upwards by flunking out of college and just, going to art school and suddenly ending up actually making a living being an artist. And suddenly there were some people who knew some people who were working in comics, who were actually in contact with some American publishers. And in the early 90s, it was when you had the British invasion, and there was a big demand for people in American comics. So I went to San Diego with some friends, and we got in touch with some people, and that's how it happened. But it was never like, if you'd asked me when I was in my 20s, I would never have thought it was going to be my. I mean, I love comics, but I would in no way or shape or anything have thought it was going to be my life's work. That was never. It sounds crazy, but it just sort of happened. I mean,
surprise.
Yeah. Francis had to put in all the hard work, and I just sort of fell through the door backwards, kind of. I don't know what. And here I am.
So now that we've talked about how all of you came into the world of comics, because I know, well, I don't know, maybe somebody hasn't seen those interviews. Peter J. Tomasi. How about you? How did you break it into comics?
How did I break in? I guess it was 92, I think, long time ago, and I sent my resume in for an assistant editor's job. I know I wanted to write. I was sending a lot of scripts around, comic samples, and got a lot of rejections, but very nice rejections from Marvel and DC and Dark Horse at the time, and Comico and First Publishing, a whole bunch of those old independents back in the day. And because I knew that when I looked at comics, I saw that any of the writers, a lot of them had started out in the editing aspect of the business and then went on to writing. So I thought maybe that was the way to do it. And I mean, it was kind of crazy that I even got the assistant job, because I was ready to go to California, because that filmmaking, writing and directing was always my thing. I was making a lot of short films and things like that. So I was literally trading places with a waiter at a restaurant in Malibu who wanted to come to New York. So we're literally going to change jobs together. And I had my flight booked. I had everything ready to roll. And I'd gone in for an interview with Dan Raspler at DC. No, I'm sorry. I went in for Tom Peyer and Stuart Moore at Vertigo. It was first for Vertigo. Mm-hmm. And I ended up getting, between me and Julie Rottenberg, and Julie Rottenberg ended up getting the position at Vertigo. And I was like, I was fated. I was meant to go to California. So then I got a call saying, hey, everybody liked you, but there looks like there's some stuff opening at DC down in the DC universe. Would you like to come in for an interview? I was like, yeah, okay, sure. So, I think sometimes it's one of those things when you're not chomping at the bit, or because in my head, I was in California already. So I was very relaxed and not like desperate. And I was just, cool and collected, so to speak.
Okay.
Because if I didn't have anything else, I probably would have been like, please let me get at the job. But anyway, so I literally got home from the interview, and there was a call waiting on what they used to call answering machines back in the day. And,
I remember
those. And it said, hey, we'd like you to work for DC as an assistant editor. So I was like, oh, okay. So I went for 2 weeks. I said, look, I start in 2 weeks. So I went to California for 2 weeks, came back, and then 15 years later, I was, working as an assistant up to group editor of the Bat Books, and then went freelance for, not freelance, and I was exclusive for DC for another 17 years. So I was a writer, and that was it. So cut to, I'm old man now.
Did you enjoy writing more?
Do I enjoy writing?
Yeah. Did you enjoy writing more than you did being an editor at DC?
I enjoyed both. I loved editing. Working with the writers and the artists at that time was a lot of fun. I mean, there was not a lot of cooks in the kitchen back then. So, you were really talking to an artist about the covers. You were getting faxes, and you were looking at the thumbs and approving stuff and all that jazz. So it was editing was great. And I just every so often I would ask for a gig at DC to see if I could get a writing gig. And I did, I'd get one or two. And then I had a meeting with Paul Levitz, who, much to his credit, he was like, look, these are really good. But I want to be completely upfront about it. But he says, at DC, we don't like to let editors write, because in my mind, Paul Levitz's mind, I think that people who are out there trying to make a living should get those jobs first than somebody who has a staff job. And I understood that, completely. so he said, I'm not stupid. I know a lot of writers end up going into the business after their editors. So he said, but the minute I smell you hacking it out for the buck, you won't be writing anymore. And but I always put 110% into everything, and eventually they approved even creator-owned stuff while I was on staff, and time went by, and Dan DiDio one day slipped a little piece of paper and said, how about you go to the other side of the desk and you'll make this much? And I'm like, oh, that's more than I'm making. I think I'll take that job. And my son had just been born too, so that worked out perfectly, because then I really got to spend a lot of quality time with him growing up.
So I had the pleasure of interviewing Jeff Johns and Ivan Hayes oh my gosh, I guess it was last month. And we were talking about the future of Ghost Machine and how it all got started. How is it that you all got involved? Well, I know that Peter and Jeff had worked, on the Green Lantern books, and they had that good.
Yeah, we go way back.
You guys, and Francis had been working with him as well too.
Yeah.
But how did everybody come about with Ghost Machine? How did that all start?
So eventually I would say about a year before I joined, I think Peter was in Toronto for a convention, and he just rang me up for a drink, and we just hung out. And then after that, I think we reconnected and just stayed in touch, right? Like, we had met each other in the Bat office back when I was writing and drawing Detective, and he was writing Batman and Robin. So we were kind of, in the trenches in the Bat office, right? And after that, we just lost touch, right? After we left that, and so we reconnected, and we just spoke a lot. And then Peter mentioned, hey, there's this thing that's happening with Jeff. Why don't you give him a call, see what's going on, right? And then I happened to be going to LA around that time, so I met up with Jeff, and he gave me this whole presentation in his house, and I was like, wow, okay, this sounds pretty cool, And to be perfectly honest, I wasn't like, I looked at who was involved, and I'm like, oh, this is really exciting. This is really something else. You could, when you could feel that, like, that he's like gathering like an Ocean's 11 group of people, right? And then there I was, my mom was with me at the time. And then she's like, oh, like after we left, she's like, oh, so you're going to join? I'm like, I don't know. Right. Because I had made some plans for things that I was going to do. And then like, I was thinking about it later that night, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'd be so stupid not to join this thing. It's just, I had set some things in motion, and I thought that was the path. You know what it is? It's just sometimes I have a path, and sometimes to my own detriment, I struggle diverging from that road. And this was one of those things where, am I going to regret not being part of this thing? And then there was a giant red flag saying, yes, I would. Right. So yeah. And then I just called them up and I said, I'm in, let's do this. Right. So that's basically it. The thing is, a lot of these type of things are like formed through like, I would say similar visions of how we perceive our work and where we want to go. And then also friendship and the ability to have camaraderie and that, what's it called? The dynamics of the people, right? I think that's why when you look at the group that we have and the way we all speak about each other online, there's a sense that there's a lot of chemistry going on, So I think that was really key in how this team formed,
Did it feel like, well, you said you were a fan of Jim Lee, and you said you would get anything with that big I logo. Did it feel like that, like the Seven walking out of Marvel Comics and having this opportunity to join something that would forever change comics?
No. but that's because, I know that comparison has been made by fans, but when you're in, you'd have to think pretty freaking highly of yourself to think that the new image is forming, right? Like to me, what I the way I looked at it more was that, wow, let me get this straight. We're gonna form a company. We get to own the company, and I get to work with people who are my friends and people that I like. So that was more my perception of it. I honestly wasn't thinking about how it would be perceived from the outside. I was only looking at it from how I felt, how I perceived it. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean, but it kind of reminded me of the stories when you said you had something else going on, and when your parents were asking you if you're going to do it. I thought, okay, I'm sure that's kind of the thoughts that Larson and those guys had, because they had something. They had a Spider-Man going on. They had X-Men going on.
Yeah,
they had the summer crossover that was happening, and they decided not to.
It was a different time though, because at the time the business was so different. There'd already been so many independent comics now, and so many different little offshoots that had started, from Skybound to this or that. So, there was already a lot of stuff percolating. Back then it was the big two, and that was it. So it was a different world back then. You left Marvel and you left Spider-Man, or you left these big characters to go throw your line out into God knows where. That was ballsy.
Yeah. Ballsy. Yeah, I had already kind of done a little bit, because I had left DC a couple of years prior to work on some creator-owned stuff with Scott Snyder, right? So I was already in that frame of thought, you know what I mean? So this, it was more, there were certain things I was going to do to return back to said big two, right? And those plans were unfortunately thrown back, right? But again, the thing is that when you're a creator, you begin to look at the entirety of your career, and there's only a finite amount of time that we all have, that we have the ability to work in a certain level and capacity of involvement that we're in. And this was one of those things where, hey man, these other characters, they've stood the test of time for decades, right? Whereas here we have an opportunity to contribute to that, right? So, and add our own set of characters, right? So the frame of mind was more so, do I continue being like a shepherd for another character, and then shepherd that character for a little while and then leave, or is my time better spent going into this company to creating a new set of characters that somebody can then keep going with for years to come, right? Contribute to the history of comics in a different way, right? So that's kind of more how I looked at it, I guess, from the framework of the expanse of one's career,
Okay. What about you, Peter S? How did you get involved with this project? Did somebody, the Peter J?
Yeah, I got contacted by Peter T. Yeah. Okay. I've worked with Pete and with Jeff and way back when, and we sort of stayed in touch over the years. And I've talked with Pete from time to time about projects, but I never really we were always sort of out of sync. I was when I needed work, he was busy, and vice versa. And they never just really.
He kept turning me down every time.
It just always happened. And then Pete called with this thing, and at the time I was actually really caught in some deadline trouble. So I was like, Pete, poor Pete, he's hallucinating again. He has this great plan, but I'll just string him along. I'll just tell him yes. We'll just see what happens. And
so
it took me a while before I realized that this was actually really going to happen. Then I was like, what? How the hell? What? It kind of took me by surprise how big this was going to be. But as Francis says, it's really it's a unique opportunity to get in on the ground level and create a new thing from the bottom up. That's so seldom you get a chance to do that, and that's on this scale, and especially in a group of people this talented. That's just it's just a once in a lifetime opportunity that you just can't turn down, basically.
Now, how about you, Peter Tomasi? How did you get involved? Is this something that you and Jeff had always talked about? Like,
yeah, a couple of years back. Yeah, Jeff had been thinking about it. He had actually had some ideas about this big DC thing he wanted to do. And I was actually pushing him a little bit, saying, man, this is some great stuff. You should just do it. Keep it all to yourself. And, you know, thinking he'd just kind of, you know, do his own thing, you know, with Image or whoever. And then he just, you know, started talking with Gary Frank. And the next thing you know, Junkyard Joe was born. And then he said, you know, I've got this idea. What do you think of this? And he started to lay out Ghost Machine. And it was, again, like the other guy said, it was too good an offer. I couldn't refuse. It was great. And I was like, look, yeah, I mean, working with everybody that I like and, you know, getting to create from the ground up, it was it was a no-brainer. It was like, you know, all these years of DC and, you know, having loved every minute of it and loved all the characters, you know, definitely a little superheroed out. And it was nice to say, okay, let's do something different, a little more not superhero genre, and let's kind of wade into some uncharted waters just a little bit. And because that's exciting. It's, you know, sometimes the ability or the possibility of failure is exciting. So it's
I think that's kind of what was neat about it, Peter? It felt like when you looked to your left and you looked to your right, you knew that everybody who was there took a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Right. You know, all of us could have had very stable, surefire hits here and there, right? But this was something that was exciting and something that was very different, you know. And I think when you look around and you see that everybody was willing to make that jump, it kind of like amps you up, you know what I mean? Because it's you kind of realize that it's gonna be success and the quality of the books was really just going to be a byproduct of how enthusiastic everybody is about this, right? Because nobody's coming in half-hearted. Everyone's gung-ho, right? And I think that's the thing that's infectious on everybody, right?
Yeah, we were really, you know, Jeff was, you know, impressed upon everybody, you know, throw your DNA into this, you know. It's like let's really put in what you really care about, passionate about, and, you know, let's tell these stories with these characters that, you know, you love, that you're creating, that, you know, you want to see keep on going for hopefully years and years to come. So it's a great opportunity.
So before we talk about the actual books and you all can give me the pitch of these books, is this something like that somebody has never heard of Ghost Machine and they're like, okay, it's being printed through Image Comics. They're the ones that are publishing the book and getting it out there. So is this something that's a shared universe? Because you guys are all coming from, you know, the big DC universe where everything is shared.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to look at it is this is because it's owned by only a select bunch of people. We all wanted to be organic. We don't have any mandates that say this quarter we need to have this happen so we can make sure our quarterly numbers do this or that. It's about let's tell the best stories possible with the best characters possible and not worry about whether, you know, there's intermingling with the universes, etc. But on the other hand, you know, as people will even see in like throughout some of even our Ghost Machine Zero issue, you know, there was a shot of the Rockefellers at a drive-in, and there was a Junkyard Joe movie, and in Hornsby and Halo, you know, Peter S. is drawn like a Junkyard Joe figure and some other stuff in the background. There's a lot of Easter eggs around, and you know, the best way to think about it is we've got these universes all at our hand. You know, there's connective tissue, but the tissue is going to be stronger or not as strong at certain moments. And right now we know that we have the possibilities. So it's not like we're going to purely connect in a very strict and adhere kind of to a Marvel or DC kind of way. But, in issue 2 of the Rockefellers in December, people will there's a moment. Okay, but no.
Look here, here it is. Okay, there's a delineation between genres, right? So we have the unnamed universe, which typically deals with action and kind of an American epic, so to speak, right? So that those ones have connected tissues because each story is rising from these different eras, right? And then we have the Hyde Street line, which is really focusing in on horror and suspense. So that's a particular genre that those set of books are tackling. And then we have the Family Odyssey line, which is really dealing with stories about families, right? So it's not to be misinterpreted as an all ages book, even though they can be read by everybody else. These are stories whose central focus is about family, right? Whether it's found family or whether it's your actual family, right? So those are the things that we cover with these line of books, right? Now, will they cross over? I mean, potentially. The thing is that we're all under one umbrella, and because we're working in a very dynamic and kind of fluid way, if organically it makes sense, we'll do it, but it has to work and it has to be something that comes out of story rather than a sales desire or something like that, right? But yeah, Halo and Hornsby and Rockefellers firmly very much so in the same universe, right? And as well as which is separate from Hyde Street. They're in their own universe, and the unnamed universe definitely in their own thing, right? But it doesn't mean that those walls can't be broken.
So it's Francis and Peter S, as both of you are the artists on these books, and this is creator owned. How much input do you have with Peter? Like as far as like the character?
We just tell him what to write.
You tell him what to write. I kind of figured.
But I mean, look, it's one of the things that even when I first started, this is like a real. We're storytellers. We're collaborating, in every sense of the word. I mean, we're there's a co-writing aspect. You can't get away from it. If you really want to do a great book, I mean, you should be at this juncture. And also because, when you work so long in the business, I don't like being alone in an office staring at a computer screen 12 hours a day. So when I can get on the phone or even go up to Toronto and spend a couple of days with Francis, I wish Peter was a little closer, but maybe I can get to Denmark one day. But we're co-writing on the Rockefellers, and we've got Peter and I are going through a lot of stuff on Hornsby and Halo. It's nice to just collaborate and grab ideas wherever they're coming from. So I just figure we're all.
Yeah, it's very much. I mean, Pete's the writer, and the concept originates with him, but but we communicate.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me, when I've been writing a lot of my stuff for the last, I would say, decade, right? I don't think, aside from Scott Snyder, I don't think I've worked with another writer, and I don't think I've drawn another book that I haven't drawn aside from the ones that Scott has written, right? So with Peter, when I came on board, we created this thing from full cloth, right? Yeah, so because I mean, Peter knows that I like writing, and it's something that I want to continue and nurture, because I really feel that that's how I feel like that is the best version of me as an artist, is if I'm also involved in the writing, So with Peter, the collaboration has been great, right? Because I feel like I get to have this. What it feels like? It feels like I get to learn on the job and then also get paid for doing the job, which is great, and it has a very nice dynamic that it's fun. It reminds me a lot of when I was working with Brian Buccellato on The Flash, right? It's a very dynamic process that I honestly talk to Pete more than I talk to my mom, probably more than my partner, so it's fun and it's very immersive. You know, I don't know how to make comics any other way, to be honest. You know?
I don't even want to make them any other way anymore. I just don't.
Yeah.
I want to be on the phone with the guys who are visualizing this stuff, because the good thing is, it's like, you know, with Francis and Peter S., they're not just artists. These guys are storytellers. They're not just artists. So they can.
It's not a conveyor belt.
We have a lot of faith in each other.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Say that. What was that?
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we have a lot of faith in each other. We trust each other to, you know, we can. It's like we're not competing for the control of the stories. We're carrying this together.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question is something that I did ask Jeff and Ivan was, when you're co-creating a story like this, right? Or when you're co-creating these comics, how does it work with, like, if the story can continue, if one of you is like, you know, I think I'm kind of done, or is there that trust? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Peter,
we're just starting up. You already have us saying like, "Oh, I'm tired."
The band's already broken up, Peter. He's already concocting how we're gonna break up.
See you, Ringo. See you, John. See you, George.
I'm not being Yoko Ono. I'm just saying that, you know, it's one of these things that I'm sure you all have thought about. Like,
actually, has not even.
No, I mean, honestly, I feel like, you know, when Pete was here in Toronto and we were plotting out the series, you know, we plotted out the finale. You know what I mean? Like, we've taken this thing to where it ends and then worked our way backwards, right? You know, and I don't know. I mean, maybe it's one of those things where one day we'll say, hey, you know, this story is now reaching its natural conclusion, right? It's kind of like, the way I look at it, it's kind of like, you know, when you look at a collection of manga, right? There might be 20 volumes, there might be 50 volumes, right? I don't know how many volumes there might be, right? We know what that final volume is, right? And I think with a lot of the things that we've created, the characters can definitely continue and move on, but, you know, with the Rockefellers, we're so entrenched with these characters. They're like our kids, right? You know what I mean? So to leave at a certain point, it's like checking out of your kid's life once they go to high school or college or something like that. It's a little bit hard to be uninvolved, right? You know, but it doesn't mean that we don't see a road where perhaps one day there's a spinoff. Because guess what? The Rockefellers aren't the only ones hidden throughout the time stream. You know, it's in the future, the Witness Protection Program essentially hides people throughout the entire timeline of the universe, right? So there are many Rockefellers out there, but in this particular story, this is about this particular family, right? You know,
and I think when sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when I think of the comics, I remember the comics that sort of stuck in my head over the years. I mean, obviously the characters are important, but what really sticks in my head is the teams of creators. It's usually a writer artist combo, maybe two artists, depending on, you know, maybe a pencil inker or whatever. But the things you really remember are usually like the products of a set team of people who had the comic for a while. You know, it's like Kirby and Stan Lee and you know, it's that thing where you have that they created the core of the book that was like the centerpiece that everything grew around. So for me, it's the team the team working on the book is at least as important as the characters. And I hope this is going to be the same thing, that this is the I mean, that doesn't mean that you can't have other people come in to play with the toys later on, but it's the team that's really like, it's the whole way of defining the way the stories are told, the art style. That whole thing is going to be the defining thing that defines these series for forever and ever.
Yeah, I mean, the funny part is I mean, because I didn't think about that at all, Omar. Your first question. But
I'm always thinking the worst.
But no, but the fun part is, now that I'm thinking about it, is the joy of variant covers at this point is seeing other artists at least take a crack at the characters and see what they bring to it or whatever. But otherwise, to me right now, there's no way I can imagine anybody other than Francis and Peter S. On the long run here.
I think Francis actually put it the best way possible, because whenever I see something like this, whenever I saw Geiger and then Junkyard, like all these books remind me of something that mangaka have been doing, for a while, and I really enjoy that. It's like one creator, one artist, and people immediately look at the books and they're like, oh, it's these creators, it's that book, and it's going to end when the creators are, whenever they say it's done, and that's it.
Yeah, might be 5 years, might be 10 years, right? Who knows, right? So, I mean, if our page counts is any indication, we can't seem to stick to 22, right? Issue 1's 36, issue 2's like 28 or something like that, right? So we kind of have the ability to contract, but mostly we've been expanding and less so contracting. So,
before I ask any questions, the Danny's saying 1,000 years, and I guess she gets to make that decision. Warren Coates, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm glad that you're including me in there too. I appreciate that. I'm nowhere near to the caliber of these gentlemen. Why don't you all share the pitch for these stories? Who wants to go first? We can talk about either one. We can talk about Hornsby and Halo or the ROCKETFELLERS.
You know what? Why don't the collaborators talk about it?
You want to quiz them? Make sure they've been reading your script.
No, I know they're reading it. I know they're doing it. No, yeah,
not me.
It's fun. Yeah, you guys say what you pitch the books.
Oh, the other side. Francis, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So ROCKETFELLERS is family from the future, and they uncover something that requires for them to leave, right? So they're essentially in this witness protection program hidden in our current timeline, where everything feels very archaic, right? So here's this family from the future that is kind of both on the edge of death and also kind of on the brink of falling apart, right? And through our less speedy version of life, they will learn to come together as a family, and while at the same time trying to lay low, even though they've got rocket boots and you got rolling in the basement trying to create all sorts of different things that's bursting out of their house, right? So it's this family that's just trying to blend in, waiting for that moment to come back home. And here's the thing, that may never happen, right? So that's kind of where we drop the readers in. They come into this time where this family is beginning to sort of I guess begin to understand each other and talk to each other for the first time, right? Okay. And while it's a perfect time to do so when somebody's chasing you to try to kill you, right? Communication is going to be key when your life's on the line. So yeah, there you go. Family from the future escaping to the past in order to stay alive and together.
Okay, and that is the.
So now it's my turn. I'm going to keep my eyes on Pete now. Pete, you just give me the evil eye if I'm going off script here.
No, I'm sure you'll be fine.
Now, Hornsby and Halo, I would say it's about, plot-wise, it's about these two kids who are growing up in a New England town, but and apparently have perfectly normal lives. But in reality, they are these two kids. They're these two inheritors of power from the realms of respectively heaven and hell, who have been placed on Earth as part of a bargain in order to broker a peace between the warring forces of good and evil. There's been this war of good and evil for forever, and now they've decided that this needs to stop. They need to bring this conflict to an end, and so they're trying to create something new by having these two representatives of each side being brought up on Earth, and they have to grow up in environments that sort of negates their natural tendency. So in that way, you could say it's a philosophical story about nurture versus what do you call it, inheritance. What was the word?
Nature versus nurture.
Nature.
Yeah, nature versus nurture. Yeah, that thing is. But it's also a story about being kids and growing up and suddenly realizing that you have a role in the world you didn't know about. You come into puberty and suddenly your whole life is changing and you have to find a new place for yourself in the world. That's also part of it. So again, it's a story about family and finding your place in the world and strange stuff that happens when you grow up.
Right. And the one thing to think about, for anybody listening out there too, is we want to make sure that people understand that, these are not juvenile books. These are all ages books. This is, 10 years old to 100. This is the kind of comic, you can read and enjoy at any age and not feel like you're being talked down to, et cetera, et cetera. So it's, these are really strong, heart-driven, character-driven, story-driven books that, are for everybody. And we're really, families are at the center of the stories, and that's why it's branded as Family Odysseys, but they are in no way young juvenile books. So we want to make sure the perception and the branding is correct for readers out there and retailers too.
Yeah, I think they're good gateway books for all ages. Whether you're an 8-year-old who's never read a comic book before, or whether you're 60 who's never read a comic book before, right? So that's why we've chosen a specific genre that is very, I guess, inclusive. You know what I mean? Whether it's found family or your own family, right? There's something there that is very broad in its appeal and its ability to connect with people, right? So I would say these are good gateway books into the industry, good gateway books into our company and a lot of our other books, and just into the medium in general, right? We want people to read comics, and we think that these are good representations of what we can do with the medium.
And we're not trying to talk down to any. We're not writing down to anyone. I think that's
right. Yeah, and all these books, they're going to have, as any good story has, it's drama. There's joy, sadness, tragedy, and it's all there in the books and the stories. Characters experiencing, some serious stuff, some fun stuff. So it's the kind of thing that you can have conversations about. And not feel like you're coming at it from a juvenile level. It's all, pure comic book joy is how I look at it. The kind of stuff, you can really just.
With these books coming out oh my goodness, this is like right around the corner. Rocketfellers is coming out 11/20, and then 11/27 for Hornsby and Halo. How far in advance are you all? When it comes to writing and then getting the script to penciling, like how many issues do you like to stay ahead? And is that something that you've learned working in the past on different comics?
Yeah, no, deadlines. Deadlines are always, deadlines are deadlines. That's why it's worded that way. But look, as a company, we're very keen on making sure that these books are out when we say they're out. Maybe there may be, I believe, a skip month here or there for some of the other books, but we're very keen on making sure that the quality is high, and we're not going to, solicit stuff that's going to, be out 7 months later when we said it was going to be out at this point. Everybody's firing on all cylinders, everybody's ahead, and we're all just, looking to keep the books in people's hands, and especially retailers' hands. So they know, on those dates when we say they're going to be there after solicitation, that they're there. And we want to, because we're supporting, we're not just supporting our own company, we're supporting retailers, readers, and we're supporting the comic book platform. We love comics, and we want to be out there when we say we're out there.
Yeah, look, the typical corporate goal is that when we were at DC, is to have 3 in the can by the time the first issue comes out, right? Mm-hmm. And I gotta tell you, I've never had 3 in the can when we were working on the Flash Monthly. I think we were always just a month in. I mean, that's the nature of that, of the beast of that, right? When something is so large, sometimes it's a little bit difficult when you're coordinating with everybody, right? With us, Peter and I, we've plotted pretty much the first year of the Rockefellers and have touched on of year 2. I'm about like 2/3 of the way through issue 2. Peter S., who's way faster than I am, I think he's wrapping up issue 3, right?
I just wrapped it up. Yeah.
Son of a gun. I bet you did. So yeah, by the time issue 1 comes out, I think a lot of us will be well into issue 3 or 4 in Peter's case.
Right? Yeah, and look, and the one thing about these books too is when you think about, I mean, as a reader especially, I mean, how depressing is it always to pick up a story that you're in the middle of, and suddenly there's an artist, and then you turn 5 pages in, and there's another different artist. Oh, and then another 6 pages in, there's a different artist. That's just not going to happen. This is about quality, and it's about making sure that for the price point that we're giving people with their hard-earned money, they're going to get top shelf art and story all the time.
Yeah, you're not going to have issues that are piecemeal. When we do fill-ins, because we're all only humans, right? So we've made a concerted effort that each one is an arc that you can't miss, that is integral to the story, and that the stories are written to those artists' strengths. So that way it doesn't feel like it skips a beat, right? So we don't look at them as fill-ins. We look at them as additive to the overall arc of the stories, right? So a lot of it is really planning it that way, right? Because a lot of times when we were in the big 2, fill-ins come, essentially there's an accident or it's the last minute emergency, right? But with us, we now have the foresight to say, hey, this is an inevitability of our industry, so let's play it smart. When we have a fill-in, let's create an arc that's specific to a specific artist, so that way it feels very fluid, right? So I think that's what it has to be. It has to have the ability that when you're reading the book, it doesn't feel like you're reading a completely different book, right? Or that there's a lack of simplicity with the story. Yeah, it's about fluidity. Right?
Omar, like when you finally put on our Rockefellers omnibus and Hornsby and Halo omnibus behind you, you're not going to have to pull those stories out if there are arcs by another artist or a writer. They're going to be everything's going to be in those books because they have to be in those books because those stories are all going to matter.
I try to get those books added to that DC Green Lanterns Corps omnibus.
Make some room. They said
no, but yeah, over here you guys have every right to put whatever you want in your books. I think that's awesome. Gentlemen, we are closing in on the hour, and I don't want to keep you forever because I know you got books to write and deadlines apparently. So I'm going to take some questions from the chat really quick to see what they've got. But there's a lot of praise for you all. Seriously, this is Flash by Manapul and Peter Snejberg was my first omnibus and still is my favorite comic book run to this day. Story and art. And no matter how bad it is, how many hits I take. I love hearing things like that.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Because, you were mentioning earlier, you were into comics because of people like Jim Lee. And now you've got kids that are, and he's not a kid, but, you do have kids that are looking up to you and looking at your art and going, man, I'd love to do that one day, and inspiring that. And I love that about comics and this industry.
I think that's one of the best parts about it, right? I think, there's a reason why YouTuber or content creation is the number one, occupation that a kid wants to do, is because of its accessibility, right? And I think, comics for a certain time felt very accessible, right? And I think it's about opening that up again and making people feel enthusiastic about it, right? And the ability of the art form. So I think that a lot of it is that. So yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I think we answered this a little bit earlier. How far in advance do you stay ahead on these titles? Love the Hornsby and Halo preview in that Ghost Machine preview issue.
Yeah, thanks, Boom Shakalaka. We got in New York. There's going to be an ash can of Hornsby and Halo and the Rockefellers, so it's going to be a pretty cool. So if you're happen to be in New York and get the show, make sure you get to the booth early so you can pick up an ash can of the book.
I love the.
But to answer that, we've been I guess we've been working full time on these books since April. I guess when was that April we started going to full complete total.
Yeah, February, March, kind of that kind of time period.
Yeah, spring. Yeah.
Getting praise for you all, and here's I'm not sure if can Francis talk about what did or didn't happen with Aquaman Earth 1.
Well, that's easy. I'm a ghost machine. Look, it's one of those stories that I've wanted to do for a long time, right? And I think around the time that I had finished Detective, I was supposed to do Aquaman Earth 1, but at the time, I started talking to Dan. And Dan was like, look, want to do this book with Trinity with you get to write and draw and color Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. And that was really, really difficult to turn down, And I think, unfortunately, aside from Jeff and Yvonne, they're the only ones who've been able to make Aquaman a massive hit, right? And I think, during my time at DC, whenever it was Aquaman's turn, there was a little bit of apprehension, not apprehension on their part. They were all green lights and good to go. But at the same time, it was kind of like, you could do that, or you could do this, and this one will sell more, right? And it made it, you could kind of feel that, okay, I could do this, but everybody there knew that this one felt like a vanity project versus one that was helpful towards the company with regards to helping books that sold, right? And I think that's one of the most practical things about it, right? The delays of Aquaman Earth 1 was me going to titles that served the company better with regards to books that were selling, right? And eventually I was going to come back to do it. That was in the works, but again, with Ghost Machine being both creatively and business wise fulfilling with regards to the evolution of one's career, once again, unfortunately, Aquaman got put back to the back burner again. So I'm sorry. But who knows? Maybe I'll do a creator-owned version of it one day at Ghost Machine. I don't know.
Maybe we can slug that whole storyline into a Rockefellers.
Yeah.
They go to a water park and suddenly nothing's the same.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Aquaman fans. I'm really sorry.
Never waste the script.
Loves all your works in comic books, and all of you going to be at New York Comic Con?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, so man, this is huge.
People. Yeah, Gary from Italy, Brian from England, Ivan from Brazil.
Wow, so the whole company. This is going to be huge.
Maytal and from LA, Jeff LA, Francis and Brad from Canada. We got Peter from Denmark, me from Delaware, a lot of people, a lot of people from all over.
It's like a big family reunion, right? So that's why we're also doing our summit there.
That's great.
That's going to be exciting.
Our ground control sort of thing.
So, Peter, are you the one that's traveling the furthest away from Denmark?
But yeah, I guess actually maybe Italy is a few miles longer because it's a little further south. So you have to look at a globe. I mean, the distance between New York and Denmark is actually going over the North Pole more or less. Is the shortest way. So that's very technical. I guess maybe.
I think
depends how fast the wind. Yeah, depends how fast the winds are going, right?
The Coriolis effect and whatnot.
You got Ivan from Brazil coming up there too. So yeah, this is gonna be this is huge. All of you together, and you all will be at the booth all 3 days. Is that what's planned?
Yeah, we'll be there.
I think we're gonna be there at some point all days. Yeah.
Yeah, and we also have a big company panel at 10:45 a.m. on Saturday, and we will be giving away the flipbook Ashcan of Hornsby and Halo and the Rockefellers to the first 100 people in line. So,
well, there you go. That makes it worth
God
it.
damn, you memorized that.
yeah,
you memorized
an email
that,
earlier today.
You're such a professional.
And that's on Saturday, right?
It's on Saturday. Yeah, well, you know what? I only know because I wrote the upcoming newsletter for that. So I'm sorry. A bit of a cheat there.
I know what booth. I think it's booth 3043. I think. Yeah, booth.
It's big in yellow and black. There you go.
There's no way he remembered. He read that.
Look for the bumblebee colors, and that's where we're at.
Okay, I'll definitely come by because we're covering a few panels that Saturday, but I gotta go and say hi to you all. That's awesome, especially a lot of y'all coming in from just different countries. This is huge.
Yeah, we're so much more personable in person too. So, except for Peter, he's a real curmudgeon. Yeah.
Oh, he's great. Every time I talk to him, he's just turned me down for interviews for the last 7 years, but I don't hold that against him.
Curmudgeon? I'm not the curmudgeon. You're the curmudgeon.
He's playing with a guitar and voice while we're doing this interview. That's awesome. Now I got one last question, and then we can wrap it up. But this is this is more for Francis. Francis, are you at IKEA to pick up some K-Lax shelves for your books? Is that what you're doing?
No, it's something really boring. We just needed some blinds because now that it's fall, the trees are about to lose all their leaves, and we have this big window in our kitchen, and it gets really, really hot when you're in there. And so yeah, and also the kids like to run around in there and eat ice cream. We just went to the dentist earlier today. That's why I'm in the car. So they're in there to fill their teeth up with sugar.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you all so much for your time, and thank you to Kat for putting all this together. It was an absolute blast to get to talk to you all, and thank you so much for all the work that you've put into comics and for making so many memorable moments. Oh my gosh, I could just go on about how great you all are. You ever get tired of hearing that? How great you are?
Not really. No.
Never gets old. All right.
You can email it to us, in fact,
every day, like around when we wake up every day, just send something that says you're great, and I'll
send you Peter's number. He loves waking up that way.
Call him.
Gentlemen,
it's better than looking in the mirror and giving himself reaffirming words. So
a little pep talk every once in a while.
Yeah, there you go.
I could use some myself. And everybody, thank you all so much for watching live. And if you have comments, leave the comments down below. If you're watching this later, and check out Ghost Machine. These books are due out in November, coming out actually like right back to back, November 20th and November 27th. Both books, Rocketfellers #1 is November 20th, and November 27th is Hornsby and Halo. And I think the FOC is October 28th and November 4th. Peter, what are you holding up, by the way?
These are figures of Hornsby and Halo. Pretty cool, right?
He carved them himself.
I've made them from clay. No, I didn't do that.
There's no way. You're so talented. You're making clay figures and playing the guitar while doing an interview.
I'm writing Hornsby and Halo too as we speak. I'm a Renaissance man. I can do it all.
Classic. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here, and thank you everybody for watching. We are out of here.
Thanks, Omar.
Thank you, Omar.